Alex here with a legal nuts and bolts video on many fine lines. It's a cryptic title, but I'll explain it. I'm going to explain it in a high conflict child custody situation just because that's the best example that I can give you, but understand that this principle can apply in any kind of court case. In the legal world, in any specific case, there are often many fine lines that can be crossed. And why I'm bringing this up is because people use the phrase sometimes that a certain person went right up to the line, but they didn't cross it. And how frustrating it can be because it's as though a person's trying to get away with as much as they possibly can without getting in trouble or without suffering some kind of consequence. The problem with the court system and court cases and legal doctrines and principles and cases is that there are often many different lines and they will intersect with each other and overlap. And so if you try to if you focus or obsess on going just as far as you can without crossing a line, you may inadvertently not realize that in coming up to this one line and coming up real close, that you accidentally crossed a different line. And I'll go ahead and go into my example now. My high conflict child custody example is this. All throughout my custody case, my ex was trying to frustrate my parental rights. And a lot of the times in the earlier phases of my custody case, I would file motions asking for the court to enter an order that would compel my ex to do a certain thing. Well, when my ex had all of these orders compelling her to do certain things, she started to figure out that anything that wasn't in a court order, she could kind of do however she wanted. And I filed a couple of contempt motions and lost. I filed a third contempt motion, actually won that one. And it basically, she got so used to trying to figure out how to go up to the line on contempt of court that she didn't realize she was accidentally crossing the best interest of the child line. So you have to think about this in two ways. Or you have to think about this in a way of this example as there being two fine lines. One of them on best interest of the child and one of them on contempt of court principles. And so in those many years, she figured out just how far she could go to frustrate the court's order without violating it. And it caused her to get used to going up to that line. Well, later on, if you haven't seen my video on modifying physical custody, I talk about this a little. Later on, I filed a motion to modify physical custody. And all of the conduct from the past, I was able to use against her. And she was really frustrated because she kept saying in court that she followed the court's order, that she didn't violate it. And she didn't realize that at this hearing for modification of physical custody, the court wasn't looking at the contempt of court principles line. The court was looking at the best interest of the child line. And in her obsession to go up to that contempt of court principles line and frustrate me at every turn, in her obsession to do that over and over again, she had accidentally crossed the line for best interest of the child. And she had crossed it far. And she did not understand where she went wrong. And the problem was that she wasn't trying to be the best parent she could be. She wasn't trying to do what was in the best interest of the child. She was trying to get away with whatever she could. She was trying to get revenge. She was trying to get back at me. And she tried to defend herself in that high conflict child custody hearing, in that motion to modify physical custody, the same way that she defended herself in all of the other hearings. Well, I didn't know I had to do that. Well, I didn't violate that. I did do that, Your Honor, but the order said that was allowed. And that's where this whole video's topic comes from. That in court cases, whether it's a high conflict child custody case or not, there are many fine lines. And you should be cautious to exploit any particular process because in doing so, you may inadvertently cross one of the other lines and ruin your case. And as happened to my ex, that's exactly what happened to her. She lost primary physical custody because she was so obsessed with following the court's order as closely as she could that she wasn't actually trying to be a good parent, which is what the best interest of the child standard looks into. You can't defend your actions with, well, the court order didn't say that, if those actions are harmful to the child in a best interest of the child context. You can only do that in a violation of a court order context or a contempt of court context. So anyway, this is hopefully a good enough example for people to understand the purpose of the video. If anyone has any other examples where they had an ex inadvertently, or even they themselves inadvertently, in trying to go up to a fine line, a proverbial fine line, where they inadvertently crossed another one they didn't even know existed. Post in the comments below, let us all know how it went. Hopefully my example is satisfying to everyone here. I know it was satisfying for me because I was getting real ticked off with her constantly going right up to the line, just close enough that she wouldn't be held in contempt of court. Mind you, she was held in contempt of court once, and all that taught her was I better take a couple of steps back. For a person who was frustrated with that year and year and year and year after year, to finally have a situation where all of that could come crashing down, where all of that could just backfire on her, was probably the most, I don't want to say rewarding, maybe cathartic experience that I had ever felt in the court process that I had gone through up until that day. There were other moments after that day that were pretty amazing too. Anyway, with that, I'll go ahead and end this video.